Let's get nuts.
I'm going to be forward and very honest at the start of this review. I almost called Mike and said I wasn't going to go in and watch the movie. I came this close.
Oh.
I came this close. And I'm like, I should still do it. I was half tempted to just tell Dave, my theater owner, that I would like to pay the $10 to a different movie, but still watch. But that would be illegal, so.
And with reserved seating, that has become so much harder to do now.
It is, but I live in a town of 3,900 people, and there was 4 people in it. So
fair.
I could have easily, just given the money to Beast. I want to say Beast Wars, but yeah, the last Transformers movie, because God, it deserves it more than this does, in my humble opinion. I am not going to sit around and act like I'm going to ignore the irony of a well-known criminal starring in this film as a person who's investigating in the criminal justice system. That there was plenty of times in this film that I wanted to laugh more at Ezra Miller acting and telling people what to do in legal situations than I did at 90% of the attempted humor that was in this movie.
I will concede that makes the enjoyment of this movie for some people who are very adamantly against supporting anything that Ezra Miller is involved with. Like that is a very valid complaint.
It is. And I am one of those people that can put the art form outside of the artist. I am still a person that enjoys the Jeepers Creepers films. The guy who directed the original ones is a scumbag that should be burnt alive. It is a little bit harder when in these situations, like I said, you have a person who has done some things and is then trying to give legal advice to other people about how they should appropriately go about their lives. So it made this a lot harder. But what I will tell you, and I don't know Mike's opinion on the film, I purposely didn't look it up before we did this review. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't like a giant chunk of this film.
That is completely valid.
There is a good 45 minutes of this movie that I liked. And a good chunk of that 45 minutes involved characters that weren't Barry Allen.
You know what? Before I get to my opinion, I will say this. There is some breaking news. It is official. Andy Muschietti is directing Batman the Brave and the Bold.
Okay. I'm okay with that because the parts that involved Batman, I liked. There's a part at the end of this movie that hit me harder. And I mean this with all seriousness. That involves Bruce Wayne. That hit me harder than any other cameo appearance in a comic book movie film ever has. I told you during the Transformers that G.I. Joe card hit me and had an audible response. That 5-second cameo, I audibly screamed, "What the fuck?" out loud in my theater.
Funny story about that. That got spoiled for me, but the reason I didn't really pay attention to it was because
You think it was a joke?
Well, no, a couple things. One, that could have been just any random picture of George Clooney. By the way, if you are watching this live and you haven't seen the movie,
spoilers at the bottom, because I don't care.
Okay, so A, that could have been any picture of George Clooney just floating on the internet, and B, so I guess this means the DCEU is officially bottled off.
That was the moment where I went, guess what? It's dead. You do not put that in the Flash movie and think it's going forward. Anyone else that still honestly thinks the DCEU is not starting over at this point is in the worst case of denial I've ever seen.
Oh, 100%.
Because you only put that in there if you're done. That screamed reshoot harder than anything I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That scene was not in that movie originally. I would be willing to bet my life savings and everything I own that scene was not originally in there.
How much you want to bet they weren't even in the same shot?
You know, I'd be willing to bet a good chunk of money that he was here, they were there, and he just poofed. You know something also? In the main credits, before they get to the black credits, George's name isn't even in there.
That's right. It isn't.
So I bet they did that after they finished those credits and didn't even take the time to reanimate it. That screams reshoot so hard.
Despite all of this, I actually enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would? Question mark.
I'm going to tell you that it's not the Ezra being a criminal thing that made me hate this movie. It is that version of Barry Allen.
Also valid.
And it's not even the travels back Barry Allen. They still had some of the nerdy twitches that I'm like, okay, I get it. Barry Allen's a nerd. They went way too ham with past Barry. I couldn't stand his dialogue until the last 20 minutes of the film. He had to be acting like he was high as a kite every 5 seconds. And like, I get it, the beginning where he's figuring out he has powers, it's cool, whatever, but And I'm not trying to ruin, I'm gonna let you go. I'm just explaining the bits that made me not like it. The mere idea that they still did Flashpoint and came up with an acceptable version of Flashpoint shocked me. Because there's a whole lot of factors in here that make Flashpoint work originally that just aren't there.
Are you ready for a hot take?
Do you like this version better
than the comic?
Yeah, I don't know if that's what your hot take's going to be.
That is my hot take, because here's the thing.
That is your hot take?
Here's the thing. I have never loved the comic event, except for all of the tie-in side stories. Like Batman Flashpoint is genuinely one of my favorite alternate Batman stories. But the problem with Flashpoint as an event is that
it's just a reset button.
It is just a reset button, but also it's a perfectly fine Barry Allen Flash story, but it's too small to be a crisis event, if that makes any sense.
It's too
and one more thing. Something that certain adaptations get right, the animated film The Flashpoint Paradox, and to a lesser extent what the TV show did for Flashpoint, they do a better job getting to the heart of why Barry does what he does, because he misses his mom.
Mm-hmm. My favorite version of it is that animated movie.
Same.
That animated movie is really good. And I get it. I capped off on comics for as far as continuously reading. So I got a recap on Flashpoint because I had given up on trying to. I just physically couldn't. DC just melted me. Like, I would keep up with Batman stuff alone, but as far as everything else, I just couldn't do it.
Same.
So I don't know every inch in detail of Flashpoint, like page for page. I've watched recap videos of like what all happened, and then I gave the New 52 a shot, and then went way back off it rather fast. But I don't. What I want to say this. I like the ideas that are presented in Flashpoint better than I like them here, but there's a big chunk of this movie we don't need to talk about because it's just Flashpoint. Barry goes back in time, and then we're back in time. So I'm not gonna go over the big beginning part because, guys, he gets sad and he goes back.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Everyone knows that part.
We don't need to talk about Barry saving 5 kids on a stretcher. It's just, oh, I could have gotten to the past any fucking faster with this film.
Oh god.
Because like, Andy Muschietti, I like you. I hope that was a stylistic choice that made the CGI look like water, because there was points in that beginning that, oh, never animate a child ever again. But like, once we get in the actual past and he gets kicked out, I was like, okay, are they going to kind of do like the Speedster Reaper like they've done in certain things? Or in my head, I'm like, that'd be really cool if that was Barry. And then we keep going, and I'm like, okay, how are we going to find out that he gets with past Barry? We get with all this, and that's cool. And the idea that it just kind of borks itself, I like the idea of just also so I saw you saw a movie a couple of years ago where there are parallel timelines and you go back and you get I'm like, I don't know if that was written to be an exact definite Endgame reference, but oh boy, did that sound like an indefinite Endgame reference. But I liked how they didn't even try to make sense. They're like, here's you here, here's there. Sometimes that just happens, and it's spaghetti. I'm like, thank you for trying not to even make a sense. Just like, time travel's weird.
I think that was probably my favorite interpretation of someone who is like not like who doesn't have a full deck of cards up there explaining time travel.
It does, and that is very much that version of Bruce Wayne's where it's like, I am not a scientist, but I can tell you this can go both ways. And so you start getting the idea that stuff's going wrong. Zod is still coming. It's just coming for different reasons, and we get the classic versions of all the stuff going on. One thing that I will say that I liked about this movie, but I hated about this movie, you got to see classic Bruce Wayne doing classic Bruce Wayne stuff, like actually the following down. You get in my opinion, the best fight scene in a Batman movie is the warehouse scene with Ben Affleck. You got to see stuff that was on par with that in this film with Michael Keaton's that was not available because guess what? That's not Michael Keaton doing it.
Oh,
so
of course
you got to see some cool stuff with him doing some Batman shit that he finally got to do. But I love how they didn't change the fact that he can't turn his head in that damn suit. I love that they did not change that to the point of where you even have Barry rip the sides off so we could turn his head later. But I don't know about you, but this kind of had a little bit of, we made the reference to hope people like it. Sometimes a bit too much.
Are you talking about when Keaton says, I'm Batman and you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
I was okay with the Batman because that was just him saying, yeah, I'm Batman. But we get the joke. Michael Keaton in real life says he's Batman. That was okay. The get nuts thing, was a bit much, in my opinion. Because he says that in the heat of the moment to act crazy to the Joker. So the calm saying of it thing, acting like it's a thing that Bruce says a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't land the same.
No, and like you had the laughing bag thing with the like, I'm like, that was cool. That was perfectly fine. And like getting to see what might be the coolest version of the Batcave in there, going through all that, that was good. The Russia scene was fantastic. Getting to see that he had no parachute, all that was phenomenal. It's kind of nuts how just once you get to the past, they don't screw around. I did like the change around with getting his powers back. They still do the twice lightning strike thing, but you have Kara take him up into the air to get struck by the second bolt.
Before we get any further, let's talk about Kara and how honestly phenomenal Sasha Calle is.
She was great. I kind of honestly wish she gets to be Kara in the new movies.
Same.
Because guess what? Supergirl doesn't have to be blonde.
Nope.
She doesn't. Nothing about her is important. And I said, oh man, I want to say I said this to you in the last film or in a past review. Never. And I had to say this to a friend of mine, a good friend of mine who's a giant Flash fan, but was like mad that Barry didn't crack jokes. I'm like, I'm not, because that's Wally. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, that's why they put Wally West in a Justice League cartoon. And then also that about being mad that in the TV show that the Flash was black. I'm like, if you're a giant Flash fan, you should know that they turned him black in the New 52, but also, and I mean this to everyone, and I'm going to use it as an example because I use the same example to him, because he was mad because that means that the Flash didn't have orange hair.
Again,
because the statement he used was the Flash is known, that Wally is known for having orange hair. And I stopped him dead in his tracks. I said, no, he's not. He's like, yeah, he is. He has orange hair. I'm like, yeah. And Peter Parker has brown hair, but he's not known for having brown hair. He has brown hair. You have never, ever, and I mean this to everyone who is a fan, the biggest fan on the planet, I don't care who you are, if you try to say that you've done this in the past, you are a fucking liar. You have never bought a Flash comic, opened it up, and went, boy, I can't wait for him to have orange hair in this scene.
Nope, never.
No, you opened up that damn book and went, I can't wait for Wally to have his signature wisecracking, snarky attitude. Because that is what Wally is known for. Not his skin color, not his hair color, not his eye color. He is known for the parts that make him him, and that's his fucking personality. Stop with the he's known for his skin color bullshit for characters that it doesn't apply to. Stop! For the love of God. I'm sorry if I've had this rant in other videos, but it needs to happen because people that use it are mentally challenged. It makes no sense.
Nope. Not
at all. Therefore, in the same reason, it does not matter if she has black hair that's short or long blonde hair, because it doesn't make Kara who she is. It doesn't make her who she is to have the name Kara, for Christ's sake. She could be Supergirl and have the name Kelsey. She's still Supergirl. Just stop. But anyway, she's really good.
Yes.
She's really, really good. She did amazing in that role. As limited as it was in that movie, shockingly limited as I found out that it was in that movie, she did really good. And as I said before, I want her to be Supergirl going forward, because you know what? That wouldn't ruin anything, because she's an alternate timeline who's what's it that doesn't tie to anything.
Exactly.
They didn't even have Supergirl in the main movies. But yeah, just her showing off her like presence on screen. It was very stoic. It was excellent. She is a genuine highlight and a part of the 45 minutes that I mentioned that I really loved about this movie. And her taking him up for that second lightning bolt after like she having Barry be a person show her that there are still good people, because she has every right to want to ice everyone. Superman immediately wanting to help like them, even though they got him out in the original Flashpoint, is weird to some degree, because he should be borderline mental if you've been cooped up that long. Her reaction is genuine.
Yeah, that's something I liked. That was different from the comic. That you had Barry go out of his way to save Kara, even though she clearly is not Clark.
Yes, exactly. Because that's what people, because that's what heroes do. And yeah, it's like he doesn't even remark on the freaking Superman suit right away, because he figures it's not hers. So he doesn't even care. You get all of them out, get ready, and you have that, and he finally gets his powers back. And again, this, like, the crux of the movie is like the last 30 minutes. I can't get over how much you could barely watch the like first 2/3 and get the gist of the movie by the last half an hour. The structure of the film still works, but it's very much you're caring about this last chunk. The thing I really like that I was shocked about is how they kind of rejiggered why Barry does this in the version of Barry you run into, which is a better version of the Savitar horseshit that they pulled in season 3.
Oh God, absolutely. I had like Vietnam flashbacks when we got to the reveal, like when we got to the reveal of that like dark Flash in this movie. I'm like, oh, like at first I thought, oh God, are they really doing Savitar again? But here it makes more sense.
It makes a ton of sense.
But there still are a few unanswered questions, like what actually happened to Nora in this universe? Was like what was she killed by just like the universe, or
well, okay, so this is the thing that so the big thing that happens, and what I appreciate for anyone who has not read the comic or done whatever, originally the big deal that Barry goes back is to still to kill his mom or to let his mom die, and Zoom thinks it's hilarious. Or is it Reverse Flash or is it Zoom?
It's Thawne.
It's Thawne. Okay, it's Thawne. And I forget because in comics they both wear freaking yellow, so every now and then I get my wires crossed. So Bruce Thomas Wayne, for those that have not watched it, because it's Bruce's parents, shoots him in the head, kills him, and then Barry goes back. He goes back and stops himself. You get this version of where they realize it is impossible to save the world, because eventually Zod is going to be the one that kills everybody, including Nora, who's alive in this version. So the other Barry becomes so obsessed because if he saves the world in this version, Nora stays alive. But the universe is just like, no, you screwed it up. Everybody's dying. So it's basically like she has to, it's a canon event type of, what did they say? They said something intersection. What did they say?
It's a fixed like a fixed intersection.
Fixed intersection. There's some type of term like that. But you have them going back and forth. And I honestly thought they were going to turn other Barry into like Reverse Flash on the spot.
I'm glad they didn't do that, and what they did instead was something better than, I don't know if you ever saw Lightyear, but there's a similar twist that happens with the villain in that movie that's not as well executed.
I didn't, because I heard not great things. But making it so that Barry repeatedly for undisclosed amount of years is still trying, to the point of where it's become a paradox to where he has to push Barry back in because he knows that he fixes things. He's become the dark speedster that follows him. It's still himself, but the third version of himself I didn't see coming in. And again, cool twist. Like, the end of this movie is fantastic. As much as I hated the beginning and it was hard to watch because irony, the ending of this movie is fantastic. Where he kills himself to stop the opposite force speedster because you can't be there if you kill your past self.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole ending arc. Before we get to that, okay. I heard about a thing that happened in this film because Twitter was not going to let people not know about this. I am normally okay with uses of CGI to bring things back. There was one that happened in that sequence I was very okay with, and there was one in that sequence that I was very not okay with.
I'm very curious which one is which, because I knew about both of them, but I was kind of not ready for the other one.
I knew about Reeves.
Okay, that's
and I kind of felt they should have left that out.
Yeah, that one I agree with.
Because it was cool having, can't remember her name, who played Kara.
I think her name is Helen Slater.
Helen Slater. Sometimes the CGI just does not look good, and in my opinion, Christopher Reeves is an unbelievably touchy subject. You could have gone with everyone else. Like, I don't know what. You could have shown the CW one at that point. In my opinion, it would have been better. Just to me, Chris shouldn't have been touched.
They should have.
To me,
if anything, they should have just used archival footage.
Yes, like something not brought him with CGI. I would agree that would have been better. That could have been a good way to show it. Anything,
because like that's something that the Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW did for like various things. They used archival footage instead of recreating actors with CGI.
Yeah, which again, I'm not fully against. That one just to me, for lack of better term, felt gross. But it is what it is. People are going to have different feelings, whatever. The one that I tell you, I am so fucking mad that John Snepp is not here. They actually put the Nick Cage Superman in this movie.
When I saw that, like, Schnepp was the first person I thought of, like, oh my god, like, if I knew him and he was like still alive, I would have immediately messaged him like, yo, did you see this?
Did you what? Like, he would have been, you wouldn't have been able to contain him. He would have imploded. Like, I tell you right now, you could not contain that man. After all he did for that documentary, that and all of that, to re-earth all of that, because like I didn't even fully know what was going on. That Superman showed up, and I was like, what is? And then I saw the spider. I'm like, what? There's no fucking way. There is no fucking way. I'm like, they're never going to show his face. I'm like, I remember the long hair. I'm like, they're not showing his face. They're just going to zip right on by. And then they actually did. I'm like, oh. And then, like, just, I couldn't get over it. I was flabbergasted. That shocked me more than anything they did in the film. No, I take that back. One thing did more, and well, I guess we kind of, said that. But yeah, and then you finally get the Ezra Miller can be a good actor. He can be. There was points in this movie where I felt like he kind of didn't care he was there. And then the parts where I believe the role was written for him was overdoing it. I already expressed that. You really can't. That's what the director wants. And that was kind of the Barry we had on steroids to obviously make Barry feel like Barry being Barry to someone else. He's not used to that. The scene with his mom, though, was genuinely great.
The reason why I overall enjoyed this probably more than most people, but apparently not as much as Tom Cruise or Stephen King.
That Stephen King thing still baffles me.
But like the reason why I overall enjoyed this is because Christina Hodson, the one who wrote the screenplay, she is really good at like really getting to the heart of the story. Like she's the reason why Bumblebee is one of the few Transformers movies to actually make me cry.
Mm-hmm.
And also just why I love Birds of Prey, and her earlier stuff isn't quite as refined as her work in blockbusters, but yeah, she gets to the heart of Barry's relationship with his parents better than the comic for sure, but yeah, she kind of like fully understands how much both his mother and his father mean to him.
Yes. And that scene with changing, taking the stuff back out, doing that, it was gentle. And then I thought it was really gutsy that they have him look and put the tomatoes back on the shelf, and I was like, they could do something there that doesn't save his mom, but just gets his dad out of jail, which is a current event. And I was like, but I don't know if they do that because I don't know where this movie's heading. And then we get to present day, and they do that, and they show that he moved the tomatoes to the top shelf. That literally changes nothing except for his dad getting out of jail right there. So I was like, that's genuinely really clever because it just gets his dad out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't save his mom, but at least his dad is free by moving it to the top shelf. That I was like, are they really just going to show this to show that he doesn't pass it? So I thought that was really good. And then the weird part is you have him get out of jail and you have the Bruce Wayne thing where Bruce is approaching. When he's talking on the phone, I thought they were going to make him still be Michael Keaton. Because
really?
the voice sounded off. It didn't sound like George on the phone to me. Maybe that's because I just genuinely wasn't expecting George. And I figured, wait, they're going to have something be screwed up. And it can't be Val Kilmer. And it can't be Adam West. And it can't be Kevin Conroy. And I thought on my fucking life, George is not going anywhere near Batman again. So and it sounded like Keaton on the phone to me, but maybe that's just because it was wires crossing. I had an out-of-body experience when George Clooney stepped out of that car.
How many years has he been doing the whole, like, you know, apologizing for Batman and Robin? Because it feels like he's brought it up every single time he's asked.
1997, so over 14 years? 16 years? Or is my math wrong on that? No, 26 years?
Yes.
26 years? 7 years short of the length I've been alive. George was never, for also anyone watching this, I will take this to my grave. George was not the issue with that Batman being bad.
No. In fact, if I didn't know that Batman and Robin existed, or if it just straight up didn't exist, I would have said maybe circa 2002, 2003, George Clooney would have made a great Bruce Wayne / Batman.
He still was a good Bruce Wayne in all those movies. Because this is something I have to explain to people that they don't seem to get. There is a role called a writer, and there's a role called a director, and then there's an actor. George Clooney was one of them in that film. 2 other people made him do things that made you not like him.
Mm-hmm.
George did not. So all this time that y'all are getting pissed at George for how that movie turned out, shut the hell up. Because if you look under the director and writing credits, his name isn't there. He showed up to work and got told what to do.
Basically.
That goes for a lot of movies where y'all are blaming the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
Try and think about that sometimes. It goes a long way. But he's been apologizing for it. So much that it's also in the DVD credit extras of Batman and Robin. The whole cast and crew apologize. And to go to that apology as well, they show live action footage of Joel Schumacher right when they're about to roll going, remember, it's a cartoon, and check.
Yep.
And also how that movie was sped up to sell toys.
The 90s were weird.
And remember, everyone, that movie almost got a sequel. It was this damn close. It was going to be called Batman Triumphant.
I remember that.
A lot of people like to forget that that movie still was successful.
It was really only a critical failure.
Yeah. And then they're like, you also had the bat nipples. I'm like, hey guys, go watch Batman Forever one more time. A lot of that stuff that you say came with Clooney was there with Kilmer.
Yep.
A lot of people like to forget that all that shit they hate was in that one too. I love Forever. It's a good campy movie. Batman and Robin's a cartoon. But anyway, so yeah. We now know with that cameo that the DCEU literally is done. Because also the end credit scene is just the Flash and Aquaman drinking.
Yeah, and even, well, no, clearly that takes place after the fact, but the thing about that scene is it's very similar to the end credits scene of Iron Man 3. In that it's like
What was Iron Man 3's again?
Tony was pretty much recapping the events of the movie to Bruce Banner.
Oh my, wow! I forgot all about that. Totally blipped the clean eye. I love Iron Man 3. I completely forgot about that end credit scene. Oh wow. But yeah, it's kind of just there to be there. And like it doesn't even, like, they don't even, I also think that thing was shot for the original film. Because he doesn't bring up that Bruce is different.
That's right. He doesn't.
I literally think they shoved that George Clooney thing in to be like, hey guys, guess what? We're not doing this shit anymore.
Yeah, it feels like what the filmmakers did is they took the DCEU and pulled a Brainiac and bottle it up.
Yeah, and they came up with the most fun way to do it. Honestly, bravo. If that is actually what they did, which I don't see why they wouldn't have otherwise, because you're not going to do another Flash movie to reset to get Affleck back, and you're not going to continue with George Clooney. So that had to be what they did. Bravo. That was the literal best thing you could have done. I am beyond bewildered to see how Aquaman ends.
Same.
Because that's the last one. Like, Shazam could technically go forward.
It could.
Because the Justice Society and I'm forgetting James Gunn's wife's character's name.
Oh, keep talking. I'll look it up.
She's a current continuity thing that goes forward. So, and James came out in an interview that said the first new character of the DCU is going to be Blue Beetle. He said that point blank, that that's the starter. But then he also said that after he's done with Superman, he's making Peacemaker season 2. So I don't know what that means, because he's from the Suicide Squad, unless you're going to say that version of the Suicide Squad's moving forward. Because technically you could do that.
Yep.
Because all those characters are new outside of Harley, which you could just say Harley, blah, 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 the Joker. Waller's moving forward. All of that can stay. It's going to be interesting when they make a roadmap of what is staying and what isn't, because it's clearly not going to be Ezra Miller.
So the actress's name is Jennifer Holland, and the character she plays is Amelia Harcourt.
Yeah, Amelia Harcourt. It's going to be really weird to see after Aquaman's done and we get Blue Beetle to see what's going on. Because they're tightly putting a cap on all the stuff they don't want going forward. And James was very tight-lipped about where the movie goes, because he was just going to let them all see it and go, guess what? Nowhere.
And you know what? I'm honestly okay with this. Like,
I am too.
If you're gonna do a reboot, you have to like wall off what came before.
And
now,
this is feeling like that finally.
Now, what they do with the Aquaman sequel is still a mystery, because outside of like a few like promotional images, we have seen nothing.
When does that movie come out?
December.
That's kind of crazy that we haven't seen a single thing.
Although
that's 6 months away and we haven't seen a promotional photo.
Yeah. Oh boy, I just realized, like, assuming the Screen Actors Guild goes on strike, that means like there probably won't be much publicity, which means they won't be showing up at Comic-Con, which means we'll have to wait until Blue Beetle opens in August before we get like our first teaser.
And so it's going to be weird how we have the first DCEU character being Blue Beetle, the first starting point, coming out before Aquaman.
Yeah, this is just weird. We're in a weird time. But as far as the Flash being the swan song to the DCEU, I'm honestly very happy about that. As far as like what I didn't like of the movie, really it's just the opening sequence outside of getting to see Ben Affleck again.
That was genuinely great. Ben Affleck's Batman chase scene with the bike was phenomenal.
It's honestly outside of BVS, I think this is Ben Affleck's, like, he's literally only in this for 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes he absolutely crushes. Like
Absolutely.
that's where he says, like, I think I finally got Bruce Wayne / Batman.
Yeah, because he actually got to be his character, where he's just being it, not clashing with someone else in the Justice League. Like, he's the entire time, like, he gets to be with the Justice League for, like, and actually fighting with them as a core unit for, like, depending on which version you're watching, for, like, a half an hour tops.
Yep.
And now we got to actually just be him being Batman, like setting down the spike strip so that he turns away from the kids and all that. It's just it's phenomenal. It was fantastic. And the actual banter about him cleaning up stuff and like Alfred being in there. That's one of my also biggest freaking Jeremy Irons as Alfred being lost sucks.
Mm-hmm.
He was so good. I don't know what they're gonna do. They have been on fire with getting Alfreds, but that was the one where I felt like he was the version of every version of Alfred rolled in one. I could believe he used to be a part of the British Secret Service. I could believe that he's been taking care of Batman and was that stern asshole that had to tell Bruce everything he had to do, but was still the kindest human being on the planet. I saw all of that in his version.
Same.
Oh, so good.
But going back to the breaking news that I mentioned at the top, I'm so excited to see what Andy Muschietti does with Brave and the Bold, because like a lot of people have jokingly referred to this Flash movie as Batman Flashpoint, because they were clearly overselling all of the Michael Keaton stuff, and
Yeah.
like those are genuinely like the best moments of the film. So imagine Muschietti getting to play with the entire Bat family.
It will be nice. If they're going to do this, I want them to not fuck around. I want this to start with it being Bruce Wayne and Damian and just have everyone be there. Do they have to be in this film? No. But acknowledge that those people have existed so that they can come in and not have the awkward, this happens, then we just go 10 years later, oh, here's Jason, and then because the timelines trying to figure it out, they never make sense and they never work. Comics have never been good with keeping that shit in good time. Just have them all be there.
What if this movie is literally just the Grant Morrison Batman and Robin run, where Dick Grayson is Batman?
I don't know.
That's
saying I'd like that.
Saying it out loud, it is a little bit of a tougher sell. However,
you can bring up the fact that he had to fake being Batman for a while.
Yeah, that works too.
Because unless you're going to do Batman Beyond, I don't see them putting someone else in the Batsuit.
It was really just like a thought, because although the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson movies are in their separate universe, like it might still be like a conscious effort to like distinguish like the two, because sometimes audiences are smarter than film studios give them credit for, but there are still people who are just like, wait, there are two Batman now?
Yeah, I think they're gonna find a person that can pull off old and distinguished, but who isn't 70, that is going to be in here with these, and I would honestly be very okay with this either being Damian's there and they're figuring some stuff out, or him finding out about Damian.
Yeah, whatever they end up doing, I'm okay with it.
Because you could have so much already pre-built in there if you start out with the Robin as Damian. There is all of Batman Inc. that could be there that you could just pull out for cool shit. And I don't know who plays Damian. I don't know who plays Batman. At this point, It's whatever James wants to do. James Gunn is very good at casting people and getting people to cast people. Whoever is the casting director, just my fucking God, stick with this Batman and let him be Batman. Because this world has already taken away Ben Affleck versus Joel Manganiello as Deathstroke. I'm not having that horseshit happen again.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I am hoping that James Gunn and Peter Safran are serious about looking at the past decade of DC films, figuring out what worked and what didn't, and also Gunn's experience with the MCU, figuring out like the stuff that worked, and making the best movies possible. And I think one other film that makes Brave and the Bold specifically so much easier is like the Spider-Verse movies, because in those movies you jump in like already with the concept baked in that yeah, there's a multiverse, there have been other Spider-Men, these movies are based on comic books. Now go enjoy the movie.
Yes. And have plans and commit to them, because this was something I was going to bring up that I didn't think about. Now, Manning, when we did the review of Guardians of the Galaxy, brought up that we got an entire Spider-Verse or Spider-Man trilogy in between those two Guardians films. Do you know what we got in between the announcement of this film happening and the film happening?
The entire 9 seasons of The Flash.
Yep. Let's have a plan and stick with it, folks. Not take a goddamn decade to get this movie made.
Yep. I think that's the other thing that I'll admit I didn't like about this movie, or not necessarily that I didn't like it, but it makes it challenging that because the DCU has been very
non-committal.
I was going to say rudderless, but basically the same thing. This movie isn't allowed to be just the origin story. It has to function as both like the first and also the last movie for this version of the character.
Yep.
And that's I think that's why there are 2 Barry Allens in the story, because one of them has to teach the younger Barry Allen how to do the Flash things, but it's the same character, so you're kind of having your cake and eating it too.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I am a DC kid at heart. I want there to be a point where people are genuinely excited to see a Justice League movie.
Same.
I want that. We should not live in a time where a Justice League movie came and went and nobody gave a shit.
I want people, like, you know, blah blah blah, film is subjective, but I want people to see DC how I have seen these characters since I was, since I was able to consciously be a fan of them.
Yep, same. We've gotten all these animated stuff that shows the depth in all of this that they can come to with these characters, and like that you could just do when you create stuff. Like just taking chances, doing things. These characters can mean things. You just need to care. DC and Warner Brothers have just been this Batman. Like, this is coming from a huge Batman fan. They just did not care. Every now and then they would throw a bone to another one. They would take chances on shit like Jonah Hex at random or Red and not even like say that they're DC Comics films. People found them out on accident that they had to do with DC. Like, why are you doing this? You had so long and you own everything. You didn't have the problems Marvel did.
Yeah, that's what makes this all the more frustrating. But like you have a gold mine, hell, a diamond mine of riches, and yet and like I'm even a big defender of many films in the DCEU, but as a whole, like outside of like individual films, yeah, structurally the foundation was not really that great.
And like I was okay when they're like, when they went through the whole big thing. See, guys, we're not trying to have a connected universe. We're gonna have a multiverse where these trilogies happen by themselves, and then sometimes they'll connect. But then randomly we went, no, we want them all connecting anyway, until we don't, and then we do again, and then we're telling people they are when they aren't, and we don't. If you wanted to just have separate trilogies and they just happened like comic books, that'd have been fine. But don't try and build two houses into each other and then be mad when the foundation falls apart.
Yep.
And then you had the whole, guys, we care about Zack Snyder this week when we want to dupe fans into giving us more money. When your selling point is a director that wanted to make 5 films and then you're going to try and cram everything in, just don't ever try to have a ish verse. I never want to hear that term ever again unless it has to do with Spider-Verse. I never want to hear director verse ever again. Ever. The Matt Reeves movies can happen and be done. I never want to have a Snyderverse thing ever a fucking again. That was the most cannibalistic, horrible thing that could have ever happened to that branch of movies. It ruined everything for everyone. And you know who it did it for mostly? Zack fucking Snyder.
Yep.
He could not care. He wants to make his own things and no one wants anything else from him unless for the people that actually care about Zack's films.
Yeah. Like what I've always told people, there are DC fans, there are Zack Snyder fans, and then there's this third like mutation of Snyder cultists who really only want Zack Snyder directing DC stuff for the rest of his days.
Which he didn't want connected shit. He wanted to tell his part, and then that's not what DC wanted. They signed him up to do something that he didn't want to do, and then when he kept doing his thing, they went, no, but cram this other shit in. They did Spider-Man 3 with Venom, but with a universe.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care. Just frick. Like every now and then people are mad at Marvel that they just get some directors in to just give them a shot and then they do things. Guess what? They got the freaking, now I can't think of their names, Russo brothers to make the freaking Captain America and the Avengers films. They didn't make a Russo-verse. They just made movies. And then when you get those talented directors in and they make a movie, you're like, that's not the version of that movie he would have made. I wasn't in the creative meetings, but they didn't let him do his thing. So therefore, that movie's dumb. So then never ask for a director to come in ever again. Because every time you get a Sam Raimi, you're never fucking happy. And then when he does a Sam Raimi type of thing, like winking at the camera, they're like, that was really stupid. I'm like, cool, you didn't want Sam Raimi then, because that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it! Stop asking for things you don't actually want.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, This is probably the most opposite me and Mike have felt on a film in a long time.
And yet we still had a very civil discussion.
We did. I didn't tell Mike he was an idiot because guess what? Film is subjective. I'm going to take a very John Campea saying, guess what? My monitor, I can measure it. That's finite. I can tell you objectively that's how tall my monitor is. I cannot tell Mike that my opinion on how they handled Barry is good or not and have it be objective, because it isn't. Art is a thing that is meant to make you feel things. But it is. If me and him, who agree on 99% of our things and disagree heavily on this and didn't bite each other's heads off, y'all can too.
Exactly.
It's not hard. Twitter could be a beautiful place if humanity just didn't shit itself every day. It could be a wonderful thing. It's never going to, because people can't live in happiness. But anyway, so it's getting out of here. I have to work at 4:30 in the morning, and it is approaching 11 o'clock. Mike, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. You need an escape, so do we.
Absolutely. And you can find me everywhere at Organoid Zero, mostly on Twitch and YouTube. I'm currently playing through Scars Above. And next week, depending on what I hear from the other person, I might be starting my co-op stream. If not, I will be starting the opposite floating off day, starting Spider-Man on PS5 all the way through till Miles Morales, because I now know when Spider-Man 2 is coming out. So I have to get that done on stream beforehand. And plus, it's just really freaking fun to play. But until next time, we will see you all later.
Peace.